Happy Friday, boys and girls. It's Miss Yelton, and today we're going to be looking at equivalent fractions. And we're going to be using length models and area models. We're going to compose and decompose fractions, and we're going to use fractions involving halves, fourths, eighths, thirds, and sixths. So, first thing I want you to look at is... remember this guy, our fraction chart. You made a nice book that you have in your desk at school. I wish you had it at home, but it's at school. Hopefully we'll be back again before the end of the year, and you can take it out and look at it. And I just wanted you to remember that the smaller the denominator, and remember the denominator's on the bottom, and it's the number of equal parts. The smaller the denominator, the bigger the fraction, or the larger the fraction. So 2 is the denominator. You're only dividing the whole into 2 parts, or halves. So that's going to be a bigger piece, as opposed to 6 as the denominator when you're dividing the whole into 6 pieces. And the larger the denominator, the smaller the fraction. So remember that, and here's a good visual for you to look at. Okay, on your paper, I want you to write 1/2 is equal to how many fourths? We're missing our numerator here. So I want you to think about it. Pause the video if you need to get your paper and pencil. Write this down. 1/2 is equal to how many fourths? Now, I'm going to use fraction tiles to show you 1/2. Now, I wonder what you wrote here. I hope that you wrote 2, because 1/2 is equal to 2 fourths. Now, what I want you to do with your pencil or pen or whatever you have to write with, I want you to draw, make a proof drawing. So do that. I'm going to move this up, and I want you to do it right above or below where you have written your fraction, or beside. Remember how we do that is we draw a rectangle, and then we split it in half lengthwise. Now our top fraction is 1/2, so we're going to look, where is the middle? About right here. We're going to divide it in half, labeling each part. 1/2 and 1/2 is 1 whole, or 2 halves. And now for the bottom fraction, it's going to be fourths. And we know that 1/2 of a half is a fourth. So we're going to go ahead, divide in half, and then divide each half in half. And that should give us 4 pieces. We always check to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, we have fourths. Label them. Okay, now we know that 2 halves is a whole and 4 fourths is a whole. So now for the shading, shade 1/2. Do that with me. If I'm getting ahead of you, you can always pause. I really want you doing this on your own paper. And you are filling in the missing numerator here, and you know for these 2 to be equal, it would take 2 fourths. So let's write that in. If you don't have it, make sure you fix it. If you did get it, yay for you. So 1/2 is equal to 2 fourths. Okay, now for the next one. The next one is 4/8 is equal to how many halves? 4/8 is equal to how many halves? I'm going to use my circle fractions for this one. 4/8 of 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. One more is 4/8. Oh, take a look there. So how many halves would be equal to 4/8? Go ahead and write it if you know what it is. And I hope that you wrote 1/2. 1/2 is equal to 4/8. Look at that, fits perfectly. So go ahead and write that in. And let's make our drawing. We don't want to leave that part out. So let's make our rectangle. And let's divide it in half so that we can prove that 4/8 is equal to 1/2. Now, I'm actually going to do my half on the bottom because it's my second fraction, and that one's a little easier for me because I'm just dividing it into 2 parts. And then my top, I'm going to do 8ths, and I'm going to divide it in half, and I'm going to make sure that I have 4 pieces on each side because that will give me 8ths because 4 plus 4 is 8. So that's going to be 3 lines. 1, 2, 3. 3 lines on this side. 1, 2, 3. Try to get them as equal as you can. Now, always go back and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, I have 8, so let's label. Never leave out that step. Get all your 8s. 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and 8/8 for the whole. Now, we knew there were 4/8, so I'm going to shade the 4/8. And what we didn't know was how many halves. But we figured out using our circle fraction that 1/2 is equal to 4/8. All right, now for the next one. Okay, here's our next one. 1/4 is equal to how many 8ths? 1/4 is how many 8ths? So let's go over, draw out our rectangle, split it in half. Pause if you need to catch up, if I'm getting too fast. The top box is 4ths, so let's start with half. And then half each side. Divide each side. That should give us 4 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Label. And then for our bottom box, I'm going to zoom in just a little. There, you can see a little better. We know that if we divide it in half and then divide it in 4ths, just like the top box, but now we only have 4ths. But if we half each 4th, that should give us 8. Let's try that. Now let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sure did. Label those. Pick up your pencil and draw this if you're not. Okay, make sure that you're with me. Okay, 1/4. So we're going to shade 1/4. Now, how many 8ths would we shade? That would be equivalent or equal to 1/4. Easy to see here. It would be 2/8. So I hope that you chose 2 for the numerator. 1/4 is equal to 2/8. Now I'm going to show you a cool trick on the number line for this one. So here's a number line that I already have ready, and I have divided it. I've divided it into 4ths. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 parts. And you can see that I labeled starting with 0 and then going to a whole. We could say 0/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and of course, 1 whole is the same as 4/4. So I'm going to put a dot at 1/4 because that was our first fraction. Now, I don't think I ever showed this to you before, but we can actually take the same number line and split it into 8ths, just like we did here. We can do the same exact thing on a number line. Let me show you how. So we're going to take each section, just like we did here, up here, and we can split each one. Watch this. A line in between, a line in between, a line in between, and a line in between. Now, that should be 8 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It is. Now, it doesn't change the fact that this is where 1/4 would go, and this is where 2/4 would go in the middle, and 3/4 and 4/4. I'm going to make our 4ths lines a little bit longer, and then our eighth lines in between a little bit shorter so that you can really see this. Now, I can label this line fourths and eighths. Watch this. 0/8 is the same as 0/4, of course. They're both 0. Then 1/8, and then 2/8. 2/8 is the same as 1/4. Take a look. Using the tiles, 1/4, 2/8, they're the same, just like they're the same point on the number line. Now we have 3/8, and then guess what? 4/8 is the same as 2/4, and then 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and 8/8 is the same as a whole. So I arranged my number line to look just like my proof drawing up here. I have eighths on this number line, but I also have fourths on this number line. So 1/4, the dot is here, 2/8, the same thing. Now let's take our tiles and model this number line. So I started with fourths, and I had divided my number line into 4 sections. Each section was 1/4 of the number line, just like these tiles. Each tile is 1/4 of the whole. And then I went back and drew lines between each one, just like this. So now there are 2 lengths between each fourth. So the number line represents eighths and fourths, and the fraction tiles, we see the same thing. We have fourths and then we have eighths, just like our number line. And 1/4 was the same, I'm going to take everything away except for that, as 2/8. All right, ready for another one. Our next one is 1/3 is how many sixths? So go ahead, write these fractions on your paper, and you guys go ahead and fill in the numerator. And let's see what you got. 1/3 is the same as how many sixths? So let's make our drawing. I love these rectangle drawings for equivalent fractions and make it much easier to see. So we have thirds on top, so 3 equal parts. Get them as equal as you can, and don't forget to label. Each section is 1/3 of the whole. Now, for the sixth, we know that we make thirds first, and if we divide each third in 2, that should give us 6. Oops, I didn't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect. 3, 6, 4, 6, 5, 6, 6, 6. And we would shade 1/3. And it's easy to see using this drawing that 1/3 is equivalent to 2 6. So you should have a 2 here. I hope that's what you have. Now, last one for you. 4/6 is how many thirds? So last time we started with thirds, and we were missing our numerator on our sixth. Now we're starting with 6 and missing our numerator on thirds. Now you could use the same drawing. You could just go ahead and shade 4/6 on the bottom and see how many thirds that would be on the top. Or you could make a new drawing, and I would want to do my smaller numerator first. That's thirds, and I would go ahead and do that one on the bottom. I don't know how many to shade yet, but I'll find out. And then my top, I would go ahead and divide it into thirds, because I know that half of a third is a sixth. I would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and label each one.